All right, so you want to see Mount Bromo, but you don't have time to read a million travel blogs to figure out what to do.
Totally get it.
We hear you.
Time is precious.
And that's why we do these deep dives. Today, we are diving deep into a real Mount Bromo tour package, Bali Magic Tour.
Ooh, Bali Magic Tour.
To be precise, and we're not just looking at the itinerary, dates, times, that kind of thing. We're trying to figure out, what does this package tell us about this region? What does it tell us about, Indonesian culture?
Yeah, and what does it tell us about, the people who made it?
Exactly.
What are their priorities? What are they emphasizing?
Yeah. So let's get into it. We're just going to jump right in with day one, Bali to Bromo. 11-hour drive.
11 hours.
They are not messing around. They are not sugarcoating it.
Yeah.
They're saying, look, it's an 11-hour drive. But here's the thing. Private car. Air conditioning.
All right.
So they're saying it's going to be a long journey, but we're going to make it as comfortable as possible.
And that's, I think, really significant because they're kind of telling you right off the bat who this tour is for.
Yes.
Right. This is not for someone who wants to just get it done as quickly and cheaply as possible.
Right.
This is about savoring the experience, even the long car ride.
Yeah. And they also mention a coastal drive. They mention a lunch stop in Pasir Putih.
Okay.
And they even mention traditional Indonesian flavors.
See, now the emphasis on food, I'm telling you, this is deliberate. Food in Indonesian culture, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's not just about, fueling your body. It is an experience.
Yeah.
And they're using that, right? They're kind of enticing you with these delicious sensory delights that await.
Okay, so you get to the Tengger region, which, by the way, more on that later. It's more than just a scenic backdrop, but we'll get into that later. You get to your hotel, and they say, dinner's on your own.
Interesting.
What do you get from that?
I mean, on a very practical level, it probably helps keep the cost of the tour down. Yeah. Right. But I also think it's kind of again, giving you that little, hey, we're not going to control every minute of your experience.
Right.
Go out there, experience the local cuisine, maybe on your own.
Yeah.
Find some little warung, find some delicious food.
It's all about that authenticity, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so day two, that's where all the magic really happens, right? The sunrise and everything.
Yeah, this is what they've been, kind of teasing up to this point.
Yes.
Day two. That's where they deliver on this whole, epic sunrise experience.
Yeah.
You get the pre-dawn wake-up call. They bundle you into a four-wheel drive Jeep, taking you to Mount Penanjakan viewpoint.
Yeah.
So they're really setting the scene here.
Yeah.
For this adventurous morning.
And they're not just saying oh, you'll see the sun. It's not just a little bullet point. They're using all this descriptive language, interplay of light and shadow and cascading golden hues. They even say something about the caldera's morning mist.
Well, and it's smart, right? Because they're not just selling you a place. They're selling you a feeling.
Right.
They want you to feel that sense of awe
that
you get when you see something truly spectacular.
And it's not even just Mount Bromo they're talking about.
Yeah.
They make sure to mention Mount Semeru in the distance.
Right.
Which I love because it's you're not just checking off volcano from your list. You're really getting the full experience of this landscape.
The whole scope of it.
But then it's interesting because they do mention visiting the Bromo crater itself, but it's almost like an afterthought.
Right. And I think there's a reason for that.
Compared to all the sunrise hype.
It's they know from experience, right? They've run this tour a million times. They've probably gotten tons of feedback.
Yeah.
The sunrise is the main event.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, the crater's probably cool, but they've really structured this whole thing to build up to this sunrise moment.
Yeah, it's strategic. And speaking of feedback, we actually found a TripAdvisor review that illustrates this perfectly.
Ooh, I love a good TripAdvisor review.
I know.
What are they saying?
So this person is raving about the tour overall, but it's the details, right?
Yes, because anyone can say, oh, the tour was great, but what did they actually love? That's what I want to know.
Exactly. So this person, they mentioned how great their guide was. His name was Wayan.
Okay.
But then they say, Wayan made sure we were the first ones to the Bromo view spot so we could get the best angle for photos.
And that tells me everything I need to know.
Right.
They know what people want.
They know.
You're not just there for the experience. You want those Instagram photos.
Yes.
You want to, show everyone you were there.
They did their research. So we've got the, comfy journey. We've got the strategically timed sunrise. We've got Instagram-worthy photo ops. But what about, The nitty-gritty details, that's when things get really interesting.
Okay, let's get into the weeds here.
Let's get into the weeds.
What's the price excludes section say?
Because, the devil's in the details. And sometimes what they don't tell you is just as important as what they do.
100%.
Okay, so first up, ferries included, dinner's not. Okay, pretty straightforward, but I feel like we have to unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, what's going on there?
What do you think?
Well, I mean, on the surface level,
Yeah.
they're covering the essential transportation, which, again, helps them keep that base price down, I'm sure.
Yeah, right.
But dinner's not included.
Yeah.
I feel like that's them subtly saying, hey, be prepared to budget a little bit.
Yeah.
You're going to have to, pay for at least one meal a day, probably.
And it kind of goes back to that whole food emphasis thing, too.
Right.
We want you to experience the food.
Exactly.
But you got to pay for it.
It all ties together.
Okay, this next one on the list, this one really threw me for a loop. Pony ride at Bromo. And that's it. That's all they say.
Okay, so they're just putting it out there.
Yeah.
They know it's going to spark some interest. A pony ride.
Okay, next bullet point. And this is something that you see on a lot of these tours, right? But I feel like the way they phrase this is very interesting. Reasonable and fair price. That means no hidden fees.
Which, shouldn't that be a given?
Right. Yeah.
That should just be a standard.
Yeah.
But the fact that they're putting so much emphasis on it.
It makes you wonder.
Makes me think that hidden fees are a huge problem.
Right.
So they're trying to set themselves apart. We're not going to hit you with all these crazy fees.
At the last minute.
Exactly.
Okay, so before we move on to the what to bring list, which I'll be honest, I almost skipped over.
I get it. It's not the most exciting part.
Right.
But as we've already seen, sometimes these little boring details can actually be super revealing.
100%. So they tell you to bring warm clothes, a hat, sunscreen. So clearly
it gets cold up there.
It gets chilly, but then the sun comes up and it's so they're giving you very specific advice.
They're not just saying bring comfortable shoes.
Yeah.
They're telling you what you actually need.
It's very tailored. It's very specific. And then there's this little line, cash for dinner plus drink and souvenir, which is them subtly reminding you.
Right. Don't assume you can use your credit card everywhere.
Exactly.
You might need some cash.
Yeah. So we've talked about the itinerary. We've really gotten into the weeds of this price includes, excludes. But there's one thing we haven't talked about. And I think it's important. We need to talk about the Tengger people.
Yes. We cannot forget about the people.
Because it's easy to get caught up in the itinerary and all these breathtaking views and everything. But it's important to remember that Mount Bromo isn't just a scenic backdrop.
It's a place where people live.
Right.
It's part of a culture.
It's a place with a real culture and real people.
Real people who have a deep history and connection to this place.
Right. And, the tour does mention the Tengger people, but it's very brief.
Yeah. It's almost they're kind of this mysterious presence that's always there, but you never really get the full story.
And that's kind of the missing piece, right?
Yeah, and that's where, I think your own research can come in.
Yeah.
We encourage everyone listening.
Yeah.
If you're interested in this tour, if you're interested in Mount Bromo, don't just stop at, the pretty pictures.
Right.
Dig a little deeper. Learn about the Tengerese people.
Yeah, because, and this is something that just occurred to me, remember that whole pony ride thing?
Oh, yeah.
It's not just, a tourist trap.
Right.
It's probably, a real part of their culture and history.
Yeah, they've probably been interacting with this land using ponies for centuries.
Exactly. So it's if you go on this tour, or even if you plan your own trip, you can look for those little details.
Yes.
And try to understand the culture on a deeper level.
And I think that makes the experience so much richer.
100%.
It's not just about checking things off your bucket list. It's about really connecting with a place.
Yeah, and being a responsible traveler, right?
Yes. Please be respectful.
Don't just use their culture for your Instagram.
Exactly.
Actually trying to learn and engage.
Yeah, and support local businesses while you're there.
Oh yeah, that's a great point.
Be mindful of your impact.
Yes, love that. Okay, so we've done it. We have officially deep dived into this Mount Bromo tour package.
We were handed a treasure map, and I think we found some real gems.
We did. And for those of you listening who are like, okay, I'm hooked, I need to learn more about the Tengger people, don't worry, we got you covered. We've got some links in the show notes.
Yeah, some really fascinating articles.
So make sure you check those out. But for now,
happy travel.
Happy travel.